The music world stood still as mourners gathered in hushed reverence outside a private estate nestled deep in the English countryside. Ozzy Osbourne, the Prince of Darkness, the godfather of heavy metal, the rebel icon was laid to rest in a ceremony that defied genre, culture, and time itself. What unfolded wasn't just a funeral. It was a final encore, a gathering of rock royalty, cultural icons, and stunned fans lined up behind the wrought iron gates, hoping for a glimpse of the surreal procession unfolding inside. Inside the estate, a collection of blacked-out SUVs ferried in some of the most recognizable names in music, film, and pop culture. The air was thick with emotion and incense as a line of limousines stretched down the gravel path. Photographers kept their distance out of respect, but eyewitnesses confirmed the arrival of familiar silhouettes, faces once seen on world tours, red carpets, and movie posters, now unified in grief. Security was tighter than any award show. Helicopters buzzed overhead, scanning the perimeter. Still, fans managed to catch glimpses of A-listers dressed in all black, some shielding their eyes behind tinted sunglasses, others unashamedly wiping away tears. One stunned onlooker whispered, "It looked like the entire Rock and Roll Hall of Fame came back from the dead to say goodbye." Among the mourners was Sharon Osbourne, Ozzy's wife and lifelong partner in chaos and calm.
And gently placed a single purple rose, a quiet tribute to Ozzy's signature purple-tinted glasses. And then, just like Ozzy, flashed a peace sign to the crowd.
She led the procession with quiet grace, flanked by children Jack and Kelly, both of whom appeared deeply shaken. As the family moved toward the chapel, Jack carried a small urn tucked under his jacket, tightly clutched to his chest, which many believed held a symbolic part of his father's legacy. From the shadows emerged Elton John, dressed in a custom black velvet suit with a blood-red lapel pin, an apparent tribute to Ozzy's iconic stage colors. Paul McCartney arrived discreetly with his wife, and from across the Atlantic, Axl Rose stepped out of a car, wearing a somber expression and a weathered leather jacket, the same one he wore during Guns N' Roses' final European tour. It wasn't long before the crowd gasped at the unmistakable figure of Slash, hair as wild as ever, guitar strapped to his back like a silent offering. But it wasn't just the rock world in attendance. Hollywood was there in full force. Johnny Depp arrived looking weathered but composed, sunglasses hiding swollen eyes. Robert Downey Jr. exchanged a quiet nod with Marilyn Manson near the chapel entrance. Lady Gaga made an unexpected appearance, draped in a cathedral-length veil, walking arm in arm with Dave Grohl, both exchanging whispers no microphone could catch. It was eerie, seeing so many legends quiet in one place. "You could feel the respect in the air," said one security guard who stood inside the grounds. Actors known for portraying rockers on screen showed up to pay their respects, including Rami Malek and Jared Leto. But what really stunned attendees was the arrival of Mick Jagger and Keith Richards together, an unspoken acknowledgement of the gravity of the moment. It felt like the last true curtain call for rock music, said a longtime industry executive in attendance. City officials also paid tribute in quiet deference, including representatives from the Office of Arts and Culture and members of Parliament.
The thought of not being with him is just unthinkable.
The family, united in grief, dressed in all black. Ozzy's rarely seen 41-year-old daughter Amy fought back tears. Next to her, Louis, Ozzy's son from his first marriage, but his two siblings were not seen.
They offered condolences to Sharon and acknowledged Ozzy's contribution to British culture, not just as a musician, but as a national symbol of rebellion, transformation, and strangely enough, family unity. Eyewitnesses noted that even rivals came. Gene Simmons, who had long been involved in a playful feud with Ozzy over stage theatrics and commercial success, arrived early, gave a brief statement, and left without speaking to the press. "He was the last of the real ones," Simmons reportedly muttered under his breath, before disappearing into a waiting car. A gospel choir, carefully chosen by Sharon, performed renditions of Ozzy's most emotional ballads, "Mama, I'm Coming Home," bringing many attendees to tears. The final song of the service wasn't announced, but those present heard the faint echoing notes of Dreamer play through the wind as the crowd stood in silence. After the ceremony, guests gathered under an open-air tent for a private reception filled with personal memorabilia. Guitars Ozzy smashed on stage, framed vinyls from Black Sabbath's early days, and letters from fans across the globe lined the walls. Each guest reportedly received a personalized token, a small vial of dirt from Birmingham, Ozzy's hometown, engraved with the words, "Still rooted, still roaring." As the event drew to a close, the fans outside remained, holding candles, singing softly, some in tears, others simply staring ahead in disbelief. A woman in her 60s wearing a faded 1982 tour shirt told reporters, "I never thought I'd see the day. He was eternal. Even in death, he's louder than life." No official speeches were broadcast, and no press were allowed inside.
Kelly, who wore Ozzy's trademark glasses, hugged younger brother Jack.
Your dad's your best friend, right? Yeah.
My dad is my best friend.
Ozzy's procession included a brass band and 6 Mercedes funeral cars. The Jaguar hearse carrying his coffin was adorned with purple flowers spelling Ozzy. At about 12:45, it passed by Ozzy's childhood home.
Still, the silence said more than 1,000 headlines could. In that quiet storm of fame, grief, and legacy, Ozzy's final performance was delivered not through sound, but through the stunned stillness of every legend who came to stand in his shadow one last time. As the candlelight flickered beneath the marble arches of the estate's grand chapel, a dense, reverent silence hung in the air. Celebrities took their seats in rows lined with deep crimson velvet, surrounded by towering arrangements of white lilies, roses, and dark orchids, reportedly Ozzy's favorite. Not a single word was spoken as the mahogany casket, draped in black silk embroidered with a silver bat, was carried down the aisle by 6 pallbearers, all hand-selected by the Osbourne family. In the front row sat Sharon, unmoving, her hand clenched tightly around a small crucifix. To her left, Kelly sat red-eyed but composed. Jack kept his head low, only lifting his eyes when a low hum filled the chapel, the beginning notes of a tribute performance that would reduce the entire room to tears. It was Metallica frontman James Hetfield who walked out first, guitar slung low, joined silently by Dave Grohl, Zakk Wylde, and Eric Clapton. Together, they performed a haunting, acoustic rendition of No More Tears. Not a dry eye remained, no stage pyros, no distortion pedals, just 4 icons channeling pain into every note. "You could feel it in your bones," whispered a production crew member who helped set up the soundstage. That wasn't a tribute. That was a farewell from one king to another. Behind them, an enormous screen displayed never-before-seen footage from Ozzy's private life. Not the stage dives or the screaming crowds, but tender, quiet moments. Him holding Sharon's hand at a park, laughing with his grandkids, walking barefoot in a garden behind the house.
There would be no heavy metal without Ozzy Osbourne. He felt like a family member to so many people.
My audience is better than any drugs, alcohol, sex, woman, relationships. It's the best love affair of my life. It's as if I've lived 3 lives, but it's all been worth it as far as I'm concerned, and I'd do it all again tomorrow.
For some attendees, that was the most shocking part, that behind the madness, Ozzy had found peace. Then came the moment that would leave even the most hardened rock stars shaken. Sir Anthony Hopkins stepped to the lectern, summoned not as an actor, but as a longtime admirer and friend. His voice, calm and deliberate, echoed through the chapel. "We don't mourn a man today. We honor a storm, a force of nature who thundered through our lives and left us breathless. Ozzy was not made for silence. He was the noise." That statement alone received a standing ovation, something rarely seen at any funeral, let alone one packed with legends too proud to clap for anything. But in that moment, egos melted. A sea of black rose to its feet to honor not just the man in the casket, but the chaos and freedom he represented. Later, as guests made their way to the private reception, a glass-walled garden pavilion welcomed them with curated mementos from Ozzy's decades-long career. His very first stage jacket worn, stitched, burned, and immortalized hung behind a spotlight. A signed letter from Lemmy Kilmister, stored in a shadow box, drew attention from everyone who passed it. "He kept that note on his nightstand," said a family insider. "Never told anyone." Scattered throughout the space were memory stations, Black Sabbath tour posters mounted above handwritten lyrics, gold records paired with personal photos, even Ozzy's infamous bat-shaped stage mic suspended in a crystal case. Yet the most heartbreaking centerpiece was a lone chair in the corner, an old recliner from his dressing room, untouched, with a framed note placed atop the seat that read, "He never missed a rehearsal, even when no one else showed up."
Ozzy once spoke about rising from his humble roots.
If it wasn't for the Beatles turning me on to music in a big way, I don't know what I would do without music.
Let the madness begin!
Food was served in silence. Not a single speech interrupted the moment. Instead, Sharon had arranged for ambient recordings audio from rehearsals, behind-the-scenes banter, Private conversations between bandmates, the room filled with Ozzy's laughter, his sarcasm, even his grunts as he tuned a guitar or argued over set lists. The sound design alone moved people to tears. It was like he was in the room, watching us, said a studio technician. But nothing compared to the final act of the evening. Guests were handed black candles and asked to follow the Osbourne family into the garden. There, beneath an obsidian sky, a massive iron sculpture stood tall, a winged bat, wings outstretched, perched above a replica of the Black Sabbath logo carved into stone. This would be Ozzy's memorial. One by one, guests placed their candles at the base. Some prayed, some wept, some stood frozen. Sharon Osbourne stepped forward and lit the eternal flame at the center of the sculpture. A soft hum filled the garden once more, this time from the choir, who returned to sing a whispered version of Changes, carried only by the wind. That final moment didn't need applause. It didn't need cameras. It didn't need hashtags or posts or analysis. It stood on its own pure, raw, eternal. A witness standing near the edge of the garden, who asked not to be named, whispered, "We didn't bury a man. We lit a fire that won't go out." While the estate faded into quiet, guarded stillness, the outside world was anything but silent. Word of the funeral's conclusion spread with the speed and weight of a seismic shockwave, and within hours, the ripple effects were felt across continents, across generations, across genres.
Ozzy had returned to Birmingham only days before his death for one final performance in front of 40,000 fans.
Everyone goes through changes, looking to find the truth.
But the biggest surprise came backstage.
You know I love you more than anything in the world.
Hope you don't marry my daughter.
Ozzy Osbourne, not just the rocker, not just the rebel, but a cultural cornerstone, was gone. But in his absence, a movement erupted. Across major cities, landmarks dimmed their lights in synchronized tribute. Towering skyscrapers from Los Angeles to London glowed faintly in a dark crimson hue, the color long associated with Ozzy's stage persona. Public transit stations posted messages across LED boards. "You will always be the Prince of Darkness," read one scrolling display in the heart of New York City. At a train station in Tokyo, a busker stopped his performance to play a slow, tear-streaked version of Crazy Train. As bystanders gathered, heads bowed, candles lit from cigarette lighters. In Birmingham, Ozzy's hometown, the fans gathered by the thousands. They packed the streets in silence. Many dressed in vintage tour shirts, others wearing all black, some with eyeliner running down their cheeks. The city center became an open-air cathedral. A makeshift stage was erected with flowers, candles, and photos of Ozzy through the decades from his long-haired Sabbath days to his latter years as a media icon and father figure. The mayor, speaking to the crowd from a small podium, said simply, he never left Birmingham. He carried this city on every stage he ever walked. At pubs across England, glasses were raised in synchronized toasts. Jukeboxes were loaded with Ozzy's greatest hits and allowed to run freely on loop. Even those unfamiliar with his full discography sat in silence, listening to the lyrics like prayers. "This is how the gods die," said one older man at a pub near Camden. "Not in fire, not in war."
Ozzy cracking that joke as Kelly's boyfriend and baby daddy Slipknot rocker Sid Wilson popped the question.
Will you marry me?
Now Kelly's joy has turned to grief. Her first post since her father's death, sharing the lyrics to his song Changes. Ozzy was laid to rest in a private ceremony, a final goodbye for the Prince of Darkness.
But surrounded by love and legend. In Los Angeles, the famed Sunset Strip was gridlocked not from traffic, but from fans standing shoulder to shoulder outside venues where Ozzy once performed. The Whiskey A Go Go hosted a candlelight vigil, an unplugged tribute set. Attendees ranged from industry veterans to teens who had only discovered Ozzy through their parents' playlists. A tattoo artist offered free Batwing tattoos to anyone wanting to carry a piece of the icon permanently on their skin. Lines wrapped around the block. Social media turned into a global mourning page. Fellow rock stars posted black square images with captions stripped of ego and pretense. James Hetfield posted, "There'd be no us without him." Slash wrote only, "The loudest silence I've ever felt." Meanwhile, ordinary fans flooded timelines with memories their first concert, the vinyl their father gave them, The scream they never forgot when the house lights dropped and Ozzy's voice exploded into the night. Memes usually reserved for humor turned reverent. A popular image made the rounds. A photo of a thunderstorm over a massive stadium with the caption, "He's doing sound check." Others photoshopped Ozzy standing at the gates of heaven with a mic in one hand and a dove on his shoulder, a gentle wink at his most controversial moment, now reimagined as myth. Even religious leaders paid their respects in unorthodox ways. A rabbi in Brooklyn referenced Ozzy in a sermon about redemption. A priest in Ireland played Dreamer at the end of Mass, and a Buddhist monk in Bangkok, known for integrating music into his teachings, led a meditation accompanied by slow, instrumental covers of Black Sabbath tracks, describing Ozzy as a soul who roared through this life with unapologetic fire. Tributes weren't limited to the music world. Fashion houses, designers, and stylists began sharing previously unseen images of Ozzy's stage wear, calling him the originator of glam metal fashion. One designer posted sketches of custom boots Ozzy never got to wear on his next tour. Another released a limited collection of dark leather jackets in his memory, with profits promised to mental health charities, a nod to Ozzy's long-standing openness about his personal battles. Meanwhile, news outlets scrambled to gather old interview footage. Clips of Ozzy talking about family, resilience, and music resurfaced everywhere. Not the tabloid moments, but the ones that revealed the thoughtful, almost prophetic man beneath the eyeliner. One segment where he talked about wanting to be remembered not for his controversies, but for the way he made people feel, played in syndication across dozens of channels. "If I made just one person feel less alone," he had said, "then I did more than I ever hoped." The industry itself stood still. Labels postponed announcements. Radio stations wiped their scheduled rotations and played wall-to-wall Ozzy for 12 hours straight. Some called it the day the music bowed. Others called it a wake-up call to a world too quick to mock, too slow to honor. Sharon Osbourne, in a rare public message, released a single line through her spokesperson. "He gave everything. He gave you everything. Please keep him alive by playing it loud." Back in the estate, the Osbourne family remained secluded, but insiders say that Sharon took a quiet walk through the garden that night, visiting the iron-winged bat memorial again, this time alone. She left a single black rose at the base and whispered something to the flame. No one heard it. No one asked. Fans outside the gates stayed until dawn. Some slept on blankets. Others sang. Many just sat in silence, hoping that somehow the sky would split open and Ozzy would walk back out in one final defiant encore. But he didn't need to. His roar was already everywhere, in the chords of tribute bands across Europe, in the whispered chants of fans in Brazil, in the silence between songs on playlists now played in his honor, in the fire that burned beneath the iron wings in the garden. Ozzy Osbourne didn't go quietly. He went exactly how he lived, with the whole world watching, crying, screaming, and strangely smiling through the tears.